at your table. This is Jonathan Albin, and this is Game Master Soapbox, and I'm itching for a fight tonight. I'm probably going to get it, and I kind of hope so. I am positing my theory and my thesis for the next 3 episodes is going to be video games are not games. Now, as soon as I say the words, as soon as the words are out the box, I know I'm going to have somebody challenge me. So let me verify and clarify what I'm really talking about here. I'm talking about the difference between a real experience and an imitation experience. So when I say that, it fundamentally means that I am saying that video games are an imitation of games. Now, let me be very clear here. I am not talking about simulations of simulations. In other words, a video game that is the game of Monopoly, where the players all are participating on equal footing and the mechanics of the game are just the mechanics of the game. That is not what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to when I talk about this in particular is the role playing game itself. And I know, I'm hoping that you will actually engage with me and we can have this as a conversation, a real conversation, and not just a shouting match. The reality is that there are differences between what is real and what is imitation. We all understand this when we think about many things. We talk about like instances of food. We look at butter and we know that butter is real. It's something that comes from an animal. It is a product. Margarine is an imitation. It was actually created to fill a gap because the real wasn't available, and so they created it as a fake to just be okay and just fill the gap. And for the most part, it has done adequately well. Sugar is real. It's a product that comes from a plant. You boil it down and there it is. Saccharin and aspartame, and you can name xylitol. You can name all of them. They are all imitations. Even in medicine, you have the same situation. And aspirin actually derives from a biological product. Many people won't know that, but aspirin is a naturally occurring material. But Tylenol and all of the artificial medications are actually built specifically to imitate the effects of the primary, with therefore trying to reduce the cost or maybe to provide an alternative. When we talk about things that we know are real, going to an office meeting is real. We all dread it because we have to physically be there and we're seen of everybody else, and it's something that is actually we are belonging to. A Zoom meeting, we can fake it out. We can put up a fake screen. We can freeze our screen and look like we're still paying attention when we're not. These are imitations of the real things. Now, they fulfill the need. They still scratch the itch. I'm not saying that a video game isn't an experience and that it doesn't have some merit. I am just specifying that it is not the same thing. We'll talk about this more in a bit. But when we talk about this, we have to realize that if things are alike, it doesn't mean they're the same. A facsimile is not the same thing as the genuine article. A really, really well done duplicate, if you will, of the Mona Lisa will never be the Mona Lisa because it is the genuine article and the others are facsimiles, fakes, and attempts to fill the desire. A lithograph is not the same thing as the original ink work. It's a matter of creating something to fill a gap, an artificial or a false something to fill a need or scratch an itch. A riot is not a protest march. If you are tearing up buildings and doing damage, you are not in a protest march. A protest march has rules. It has a set time of beginning, a set time of the end, a set distance that you're traveling, a set number of people that are involved. These are all things that are established in the understanding that we have of our culture of what a protest march is, and these things that turn into violent interactions are not the protest march. You can say, well, they're not part of us and it wasn't part of what we're doing. That's fine. You are at least being honest when you say that. But the issue is that you cannot have it both ways. You can't have the real become the imitation. You can't have the imitation become the real. They are not the same thing. And I'm going to prove that to you in particular in role play games, in video games in particular. A massive multiplayer RPG is not an RPG. I think that there's probably no one on the planet that would say it's the same. The reason why they even came up with that specifically narrative description was because they knew that they were not talking about a role-playing game. As a veteran with almost 50 years behind the screen as a game master, I can tell you that the mechanism that occurs in a massive multiplayer online role-play game is not engaged in role-play in any way. There are things that are the same, that are alike, but they're not the same. The NPCs are not. They are window dressing. They are flat. They don't have any input. They have no thought behind them. Granted, today's AIs are better at emulating what an NPC might say, but it's still ultimately not a game master fulfilling the role of a non-player character, which is what it was intended to be. It is not the same thing. Now, in our culture, I'm clarifying that when we're talking about video games or not games, I want to talk about this in particular. We as a culture despise phonies. When we find out somebody is falsifying something, we're done with them. Milli Vanilli, I don't need to say much more. They were a musical performance group. They were really good at what they did, which was lip syncing, but they were not the performers, and they were trashed. They were destroyed. People died. It's awful what we do when we find a phony in our midst. UFO hoaxes. Somebody who creates a really clever UFO hoax has done a lot of work. They've gone to great lengths to fake it. But once we find out it's a fake, we're done. We don't want to deal with it. Do I need to really say anything about weapons of mass destruction, in whether they existed or not? The point here is that we hate falsehood. We hate fake. We hate fake news. Maybe some people like them, but some people hate fake boobs. It's a time-honored tradition for men to hate fake orgasms. So we are striving always to try to find the real deal. But the problem is that when we're talking about it in the case of games, we are being undercut. Our dreams are being destroyed. And this is across the board. I'm not talking about just the fantasy, because of course when I say RPGs, everybody goes to Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of thing. But here what I'm talking about is our dreams, our real wishes for the world. We are told, don't get rich. You can't get rich. The rich are already rich, and the poor are going to get poor. So the best you can do is don't try to get rich. Just get by. Just accept the imitation. It kind of feels like it. You drive a car that's got all the shiny bits that the Mercedes has, but is not a Mercedes. It's ooh. And I know that Mercedes is not the top of the line now. Everybody's moved on to Benzes and all of that. So I realize that I'm speaking from an antiquated position as far as that's concerned. But my point is that we have settled for on so many levels. We don't continue to push forward to advance towards our real goals. We let our goals be glossed over with something less than what we wanted. Don't make a decision, make a choice. In other words, you don't have to actually discern whether there is a decision that needs to be made. You just pick one of the options. That's all you're supposed to do. Don't make a decision, make a choice, because there's a million other people out there and they might not have the same one as you, so just pick one of them. It doesn't matter which one. Don't try to be a Mr. Right in this world. You will be crushed and destroyed. Don't be a Mr. Right, be a Mr. Good Enough. For now. Right? There's Weird Al does a great song about that, sort of everything I ever wanted. But the point is that we want to get to the point in our lives where we actually don't have to feel the failure. So we go through the motions, but we don't take actions. If we get to the point where we have to make an action, well, we'll go through the motion. We won't quit our job. We'll quiet quit. You know what I'm saying? We create artificial versions to take the place of the real version, because the real version might be too much work, might be too difficult. So this leads to another point, and that is that no matter how great the imitation is, imitation is not imagination. If you are thinking in your own life about the things that you've done and the levels of success you've attained, just realize that sometimes we have a vision of what we want to accomplish, but then we have what we actually accomplish, and then we just change our sights. We bring down the sights a little bit so that what we attempted to get to sort of could be interpreted that we made it, because it's not quite as bad. We almost got there, and this concept of imitation not being the same as imagination. A person who has imagination has the world. Albert Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is imagination, because we're able to see beyond the current reality to a reality that might happen if we dedicate ourselves to it. Now, this doesn't say that cleverness is equal to wisdom. In today's world, the cleverest of men hide their sources the best. They show what they claim to be innovation, but they don't do anything to innovate. They don't try to step past that boundary and create the perfect. Instead, they just settle for what they have and then call that good enough. And I'm sorry, but my mentor, I'm going to mention his name, and so he'll probably get burned down, but Mark Simmons told me, words mean things. If I say something and I believe it, then it's not the belief that matters, it's the words that I said, because that means something. Now, belief does not make something so. My atheist friends will tell me over and over again, just because you have a belief in a God or a belief in a creator doesn't mean that there is one. But they don't realize that that's a two-edged sword. Disbelief doesn't make it untrue if it is true. Your lack of belief doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't there. I'm going to give some examples of where words mean things in our culture right now. These are things that happen all the time. What is a woman? I'm sorry, I'm going to get some despite from this, but the reality is that I believe that a person's position and their decisions in life make whatever is true for them, but it does not make it true biologically. It does not make it true in any other sense of the word. So, who is John Galt? Now, those of you that are not objectivists probably have no idea what that is a reference to. I'd recommend you read or see the Atlas Shrugged book by Ayn Rand. It's an amazing story, and the point is, who is John Galt? Who is this guy? He's changed the world, but we don't know who he is. And the reality is that I don't see myself as a John Galt, but I do see myself as a change agent, because I believe that the next question in this equation is, what is a game? Now, I could spend 3 more hours on this conversation. As a matter of fact, I blew through this information pretty quickly. Normally it takes me 18 minutes to do 1 page of notes, and I've done 3 pages. So there are going to be more coming into this in part 2 and 3. But let me give you this. This is my definition for a game, and it is the reason why the statement that video games are not games qualifies. And I'll clarify that in episode 2. But what is my definition of a game? A game, and this is going to be a short, I'm going to make this into a very short video too. A game is a interchange over a limited period of time between 2 or more mental powers who, by the choices that they make, derive a conclusion and a solution for that condition. You play a game of cards, you pull out the cards, you have a set number of points you're going to. The mechanism that you play, doesn't matter which game it is only playable while you have cards left in the deck, so to speak. When you run out of cards, fundamentally the game is over. When you have finished the parameters for the scoring, the game is over. And this applies even in role-playing games, that the engagement and the interaction needs to be multiple minds. And this is perhaps where the line's going to fall. People who design video games definitely are playing a game. They are trying to create a property that will drive people to spend money, to spend hours attempting to solve a puzzle that was made by someone else. Or they want to experience the environment that was created. Or they want to get all the loot. There's a million different ways to win, but this is the definition for a game, and this is what I will be using in later episodes when I talk more clearly about why video games are not games directly. And I will go more into that. If you have any questions or comments, if you find this entertaining or dangerous, either one, make sure you leave a comment and let me know what you think. If you feel that what I'm saying is absolutely, abjectly wrong, please make a comment, a salient, argumentative comment, and explain your position. I'll be glad to engage with anybody who does so. There is not a reason for anybody to utilize ad hominems or rudeness in communication, because that clutters and blocks the conversational process, and it prevents people from sharing true ideas. So just realize that is going to be a stipulation as well. So this has been Jonathan Albin, the Game Master J, Game Master Soapbox, Nyko's RPG, and I will be doing another of these Soapbox episodes every night at 11 p.m. Tomorrow's will be episode 2 of this conversation, and it will go into the specific details on how video games are not games. Stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, why don't you hit the follow button, the subscribe button, the like button, and become part of this community. I'd love to have conversations with you, and let's see what we can come up with together. Maybe you'll change my mind. It's a possible thing. You know, there have been stranger things happen in this world than a person changes their mind on a concept. And I will give evidence for how this is not the case that I actually have investigated. So we will talk more about this next time. Thank you again.